Hey, Mike. Hey, Mike, if you can hear me, can you give me a thumbs up? Larry, are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Can you hear me as well?
Yes. Linus can't make today's meeting because he's probably out of town, but.
Okay. Is there anywhere you can still travel to?
Yeah. Hey, Linda.
Hi.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
All right. So we can hear, so far we can hear everybody. So I think all we're waiting for is Aaron. Oh.
I think it takes a minute from someone logs in before the audio works.
There we go. Hey, Aaron, just you're there. Just speak for a second so I know I can hear you.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep. Good.
Very good.
So I think we're all here because Linus can't make it.
Okay.
Mike, is anybody else from your team going to be listening in, or just you? Okay.
Just us.
Okay. So let's see, who watched the last board meeting? I know Linda did. Aaron, did you listen to the last board meeting?
I listened to some of it.
Okay. Mike, I don't think you were there, were you?
No.
No, and I know Larry wasn't there. He was smart. So, just very quickly, and Aaron, I'll turn it over to you in a little bit, but I just want to update from the board meeting. The board agreed to move the petition vote to the state primary, which is August 11th. And there was some good feedback from the public. I would say Doug Wilberding, Stuart Richard, a couple other folks, and I think there was a balance of pro and again sort of thing. I think the most discussion probably was, are we sticking a spade in the ground or not on this particular thing? I think Linus made it pretty clear that, we're not sticking spades in the ground at this point. We're just doing some of the preliminary work that Mike, he emailed us this morning. So I don't know. I know that as far as the governor's thing, Mike, that non-residential construction is kind of a non-critical type of thing. So I know the schedule will change with the result for moving things out to August 11, but I'm not sure much could be done with a spade at this point in the ground, even with that. So that's the big thing. Basically, I would say generally there was agreement by the board that we should just be careful about what we do versus not do. That obviously the letter of intent, we want to. I thought Miranda had sent that out, so my apologies. I just sent that out actually the day of the board meeting, so that's, Mike, why you got it a little bit late. The board, I think the board was pretty clear on, make sure we don't exceed that $15,000 number in terms of the letter of intent. Am I missing anything, Linda or Aaron, for that which you heard?
Oh,
No.
I tell you got it.
I think, as far as I stayed, that was the gist of it.
Yep. I think it kind of, it's probably disappointing that we have to put it out to August for the vote, but I do get the reason why, and it's hard to argue with the COVID stuff. And I do sympathize with Bonnie in terms of workers and how you stack people in a room versus not, and whether you can do an all. I don't think the Secretary of State, in other words, I don't think they were too helpful, but I think they granted enough uncertainty in an election during this time frame that everybody kind of grabbed onto it. So I think with that, Aaron, I think I'll turn it back over to you from that standpoint in terms of what's going on. And at some point, I think it would be good for Mike to go through and just summarize what he's put in his email and the kind of work that's been done so far.
Sure, we will get to that. All right.
Oh,
well,
and by the way, you guys are being recorded as part of this. Not that I'm really putting it all out there, but I am uploading it to the YouTube site that we created to put these things in. So just know that I'm really more focused on project meeting notes that you put together, Aaron, but I am recording this just in the event that, or these things just in the event that hell breaks loose, that people can have access to it. That's all.
Sure. All right, so I sent around an agenda. First item is agenda review. Does anybody have anything besides Herb's update to add to the agenda?
Not for me.
Okay. So the next thing is report on the 3:30 action items. I guess we'll just go through them. Does everybody have a copy in front of them? I'll read them. Herb, respond to Steve Flanders' letter, which you did. There's been a lot of discussion. Go ahead.
Wait, it's Herb. There are two consultants that Steve has been in touch with. So when we spoke, the first one was this local guy, Gary, and that was what we were talking about. This is the guy who understands about geothermal source heat pump stuff. And I don't believe you responded to Steve and Gary. But then secondly, then this other thing came where Steve and Doug Wilberding had been in touch with this Burlington guy, and you responded to that. So let's clarify that there were two separate contacts that Steve has made with outside professionals.
I basically both Claudette and I responded to Steve. You know, I started out with the thing basically saying, well, it's really up to the board whether they're going to accept having some kind of consultant come forward or what have you. And Claudette basically said, yeah, no, the last meeting was totally jammed with the agenda, so that ain't happening. It doesn't say that something might come forward in the future, but Claudette was also very clear to say that or it was either Claudette or Langus in response, it basically said this is not an item that the board has endorsed from that standpoint, that there is, if anybody's expending any funding, it's not coming from the town, blah, blah. So that I think that there was enough response back to Steve for a number of the things that he's been dealing with, whether it be through me, Claudette, Langus, and it was probably more email-based. Yeah, Steve's got about 3 projects that he's trying to deal with me offline, so sometimes it's hard to remember. So I think he said, other than that one initial thing that I did after our last meeting, I know he's come back a couple times, but I would generally say he gets it. And I think that with the stuff being pushed off to August 11th, I don't know if that will calm it down or pick it up with regard to saying now we have time to look at stuff, but I don't have any money to deal with that right now. I'm more worried about keeping people employed and all the tax stuff being delayed, which means the tax rate stuff is probably going to be delayed, but yet I got to start a fiscal year too. So I'm a little nervous. I'm going to have to actually borrow money at some point to do cash flow. I don't think it's not a crisis, but I'm more still sitting in the seat of saying to the select board as much as possible, try to stay on target, on schedule with regard to property taxes and the way that we deal with it. And we can always do revised tax bills later on in the year, which administratively is a burden, but I do want to make sure that cash flow wise we can still kind of move forward with stuff. The problem is that I'm sure everybody out there in the world is because they don't have to file taxes by April 15th, they're going to wait until the last minute on July 1 and blah blah. So I think Steve's had, sorry for the babble, I think Steve's had a sufficient amount of response back from either me or board members, but not necessarily formally.
Okay. So we'll call that closed. The next item for you, Herb, was to follow the state stimulus discussion. I'm not sure a lot has happened there. Is there anything to report from anyone about it?
No. I mean, basically what's happening is with regard to anything that's going on right now that has a COVID-19 attached to it, we basically are just putting forms and everything together to, if we ever can get reimbursement, we can do that sort of stuff. But everything that's going on is basically, the governor just extended.
God damn it, son of a bitch! God, there goes that fucking thing. Jesus.
So you all right, Larry? So if there is any kind of reimbursement from stuff, that'll come in a much later time, like a typical FEMA related stuff. I know that with regard to just finances in general, I haven't done anything else with regard to researching anything. I think Langus, if he had done anything, he's holding on to it right now. But my guess is that he has not researched heavily the private funding type of thing. Is that
right?
What was the agenda item? I'm just trying to remember.
I think the part of it, at least from my mind, was that there's some little bit of discussion of COVID, specifically of COVID-19 related infrastructure stimulus coming down the pike at some point, and just keeping an eye on that so that this project, as a shovel-ready project, is well positioned. So I think Lynn has talked about that a little bit too separately, and I think it's just something that we're keeping an eye on, basically.
Yeah.
Do you, Herb, can you mute Larry? Do you have the ability to do that?
Yeah, I think so.
So next item.
Hold on.
Sure.
Actually, I don't, because I didn't sign it as the host. But
okay.
Larry, you all right? Yeah, I don't know what's going on there.
Okay. We'll just continue. So James, obviously, the next item is James to continue CAD work, which obviously has happened. We have an email from Mike about that this morning. I guess we'll get to that and further in. And then Mike, estimate how changed circumstances will reduce project cost, and also to update the timeline. Have those things made any progress?
No, other than the first step of this was getting our preliminary drawings nearing completion. And so now that we have that, then we're headed in that direction. But now that we have till August, we have a little bit more time to update both these things. And
Sure.
What I would say is the next step before we can try and take a stab at updating pricing is I do need to do a follow-up site visit to Tracy Hall, and be, what I believe I need to wait for is obviously any town approval to get in, but I think sometime in May, when I don't know what you call it, shelter in place is lifted, I'd like to go back up to Tracy Hall. And with that being said, on those, there's two different sets of drawings. The first thing is, we had an architect measure the existing building so that we could create an AutoCAD shell. That is complete. I can give that via email over to the town, and you guys can use that with the appropriate disclaimers on any other future needs in the building, like, fire escape plans, ADA surveys, that type of stuff. So that's a nice file for you guys to have for any future things, whether or not this project happens as constructed currently. The other thing is we've done some preliminary designs, and I'm a little sensitive toward the amount of document flow on this project. So it's not super typical that, like, when I do a preliminary set of drawings, that it gets distributed to the world, because for a lot of reasons, it's kind of like when you're in the middle of a financial audit, the preliminary stuff is useful, but it's not anything that we're ready to share and defend and discuss with anyone. So I sent those to this committee so that they can verify for payment that work is happening, but those drawings are really not meant to be shared with outside consultants or anything at this point. There will be a point where we're happy to do that, but right now it's for internal usage. So I just wanted to have that quick discussion.
Okay, are they stamped in some way to indicate that?
They say progress only, but because we have had to work in a vacuum and not be on site, we've taken some big assumptions about how to get ductwork around and the structure, and we really need to go back on site before we're ready to sort of share these documents with anybody.
Sure.
Yep. And I would say that, I mean, I don't have a problem, keeping them out from that standpoint, but if someone wanted to look at them, I don't have a problem looking at them, but I do understand the sensitive nature from that standpoint. And, if Langos were here, I would ask him with his legal mind on, technically we don't have a contract with you yet, and if there's anything that is kind of in draft contract format or whatever, those things can be held proprietorily, if that's a word.
Yep.
But I don't know if the letter of intent constitutes a form of a contract. That's where I would have to rely on Langos to deal with that. Leave it at this, that, if people get requests for it from the committee, to just forward their request to me, and then that way I can kind of at least funnel the request a little bit and decide what we're dealing with. That way we can keep it in the committee, but if if folks really do want to look at it, that way I can properly read them the riot act in terms of, preliminary, wholly, draft, super not ready yet sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I could see people saying, "Oh, look they put a duct shaft right in front of the World War I memorial," or it's because we're working without the ability to go on site, and just because of COVID-19 and see if what we're drawing makes sense. So I mean, it does to a certain point that we know we need to get ductwork from A to B, but the paths are just very preliminary right now. They're not ready to be shown and discussed. And, sometimes when preliminary information gets out before it's ready, it creates more harm than good, because someone's like, "Oh, look they're putting a pipe right where my desk is." And it's like, well, that's not really the intent. We're just trying to show that a pipe needs to get there, and we don't know. Anyway, that's why I'm very sensitive about preliminary information being preliminary.
No, I get that, and I don't want to do any more damage control than I have to on anything.
Yeah.
So, and I know that there are individuals that are following the process that would make it not purposefully difficult, but would result in the need to do some kind of level of damage control or something along those lines.
Right.
So that's why I just think, again, for the committee or the team, as I'm trying to use the term I'm very purposely trying to use team instead of committee. If you get those kinds of requests, if you see them, just funnel the request to me, or basically refer them to me, and I'll deal with it.
Right. Okay. Herb, from your perspective, what's the time frame or the limits on a small team from EEI coming in to do a site visit?
So I could, Mike, you and I can schedule something from that standpoint. There's a very small crew here from that standpoint. What I would want to make sure that we do is just, if we have to, obviously, as long as if you have to do outdoor work, that's fine. I just want to make sure that we've agreed on a date so that I know when that's going to go on. Anything interior-wise, we can schedule something by appointment, but I'll make you wear a mask and that sort of stuff for whomever's coming if you have that. So even if it's just a dust mask or a scarf or something for the day.
Yeah, we have masks, and I'm okay. I'm comfortable to wait till this initial ban on construction is over with. So
Great.
I don't know when that expires. I think is it early May, first week in May? Is that right?
The governor just extended it to May 15, which
May 15.
Stay home, stay away from people, sort of thing.
So tentatively after May 15, and I'm even, if people are still even sensitive at that point, I'm willing to do this after hours in some way, like just, we'll wear gloves coming at night and, you know, and just so I'd say tentatively if we could schedule it for I don't know, the week of maybe Thursday the 21st or something like that, and just kind of I'm happy to come in after hours.
We can figure something out. I think we can just shoot me a couple dates that make sense for you from that standpoint, and then we can work it out, because I'm not afraid to work nights.
Yeah.
All right, so last thing on our action items list is for Linda to search for alternative funding options, grants, etc. There has been a little talk there. Linda, you want to update us?
Yeah, not much. What the conversations I've had that relate to this include, I did contact our state rep, Tim Briglin, to ask if he had any hints of, new state or federal funding, and he didn't at that time. And as somebody previously mentioned, I think there is, potential for another round of federal, and I think it would be stimulus money, and so I think we just have to keep our ears open on that. The other thing is we went over for me and Aaron, I think it was better detail. For Mike, I think you already knew the details of this, but we went over with the Efficiency Vermont contact and, kind of explored what current options there might be for additional incentives from them, and Mike already knew them, and so there aren't any new things. We did talk briefly about an existing federal program that the folks who are knowledgeable, Mike and the Efficiency Vermont person, described as difficult to apply to, and it comes with many strings attached, and so it didn't seem to me at least, it didn't seem very appealing to get into that. The one other thing, excuse me, that I can mention is that a Vermont group called Energy Action Network, that's a group that does statistics and stuff on energy and clean energy issues in Vermont. They last week were asking people to submit ideas to give to our federal delegation with regard to useful clean energy purposes to put any future federal stimulus money. So I gave our project as an example and broadened the suggestion to be a higher level of incentives for clean technology projects for schools and towns, because basically the existing incentives from Efficiency Vermont, like for our project, they're like less than 2% of the project cost, which hardly has any impact on decision making. And so the suggestion beginning to make its way would be something on the order of 10 to 20% could have an impact on boards and voters' decision making. So there you go. That's nothing particular for us at this point.
I'll just add that after that meeting, didn't Cheryl, I think it's Cheryl at Efficiency Vermont, talk with Green Mountain Power and they upped their incentive quite a bit as a result of the whole conversation. Isn't that right?
Well, yes. However, we have to choose. We either go with the bigger Efficiency Vermont incentive or the bigger GMP, and they're not very far different. It's under 33,000 either way. Going with and that's distinctly for Tracy Hall. There's, I think if I recall, it was like an extra $6,000 potentially from Efficiency Vermont for the work in the other two garages. So potentially we're talking about what, like less than 40,000 all told.
Okay. Okay, so getting back to the agenda, that covers action items and some of the other things. Reconsideration is next. As we already heard, it's currently rescheduled for the August 11th primary. Do we have any other things to discuss on that front at this juncture?
I think the only thing would be I would just kind of request the two energy committee members. I think you guys, if you can help out like you did with the last vote in terms of just getting information out there, not telling people how to vote, obviously, but I think we'll probably have to, just get some of that town meeting style meeting that you had back out there when we get to that time frame. I honestly don't know. In terms of, I've been working with Bonnie so far to figure out, what we may have to deal with and all that. Hopefully by the time we get to the August primary that, she'll still be able to have a physical polling place and people that can either sit next to one another or, it won't be so dramatic as it is right now. So that's something that I see going out there. And then in terms of the notice and all that, I'll be working with Bonnie to help her get that out on time. But beyond that, I think it's just kind of a little bit of a waiting game. And then the sidebar to all of that is what Mike can do within the bounds of that $15,000 letter of intent. Some will interpret that as moving forward with the project, but that's where push comes to shove with regard to I think some of the emotion of the vote and people's perspective on the vote. So that's really it in terms of, from my standpoint, unless you folks have perspective that makes sense from your angles.
I would just say certainly Linda and I were talking already about new info sessions and influence campaign of some sort. So that will definitely happen. Great.
And as always, I appreciate you helping out with me on this project team.
Right, thank you. Next is COVID-19. As I was mentioned, state order shutdown orders have been extended to May 15th. Anything else that we want to talk about COVID-19 at the moment?
I'm tired of talking about it.
I don't blame you. Okay, moving on to the letter of intent. I think, Mike, you send a status of money spent to date. Is there? So we have a little subsetting here: status of work to date, money spent to date, reasonable work left to do. Yeah.
So I will project that we will spend the 15,000 by the end of the month. We will in fact go over the 15,000. However, EEI will be responsible for the overages. So we had originally targeted 20,000 for this effort, and then it was cut back to 15. So we're gonna go over budget, but that internally EEI will bear the brunt of that. So it won't impact the town. But I think it's one of those things where we had momentum, and prior to COVID-19, it felt like we would have been on pace for a quick reconsideration, and then a quick, if that failed or passed, however that the right terminology is, we could then start in the summer. So we at the time were trying to be ready to launch for a summer project, but anyway, unfortunately, that's not the case right now. But we'll have a lot of great information, and I'm hopeful that we'll have some new pricing information prior to the vote, and maybe we can win over some of the people when they really, when we have a new info and we can actually show the prints and the benefits of the project and the pricing. Probably hopefully coming in less than projected. I'm hopeful that some of the people who are against it will come around, but we'll see.
Yep. And you're tracking your time, right, Mike, and all that.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
if we can, we get a positive vote again and move forward and all that, we can wrap those costs into the stuff. So
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, great. We already talked about drawings. Revised timeline is in the works. Probably haven't had any progress on the easement with Cheryl Herman, I'm guessing.
Well, but I did talk to her last week and basically explained that we may be able to put the wells on the town site. I'm still fascinated as to how we can do that, but just in terms of the, I'm not familiar with the digging of the wells and stuff, but I did indicate to her that we might at least have to have a construction easement to help with the digging of the wells, and we may still have to have a full easement. So she was not crabby or saying no or anything along those lines. I think she just wants some. She appreciated the update. I did indicate to her that that I do remember that they would like the potential of potentially either hooking on sort of thing, and I said that may result in having to dig a couple extra wells for them so that they would have their own system, or if there was the ability to provide the looping but closed off. Either way, I said in both instances, if there were separate wells that we dug for them or what have you, that there wouldn't be anything beyond that, that it would sort of be closed off, and then they would be responsible for whatever construction activity had to occur over their way to hook into the whatever wells that we might set up for them from that standpoint, as a for instance.
Okay.
So I just made it pretty clear that we're not going to be, Mike's not going to be walking over next door and taking measurements over there and figuring all that stuff out. It's really just the provision of the infrastructure for them to decide at some point whether they want to deal with that.
And I would say we found a way to put the system on Tracy Hall, but the cleaner layout is to put it in that shared parking area, which would require the easement. So that being said, whatever the town wants, we can make work. But maybe that's a question for the future. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's something we can battle out in the future. I get a little bit nervous with the pounding next to a historic building a little bit, and with, as you say, with the monuments and some of the other things. But I just want to, if we can do it and we don't, kill people and things, then great. But I do understand we still may need to be out in the parking lot, which is probably the more practical solution. And I would just say that I think Cheryl is still amenable to that. So.
Drop the bottle. Thank you.
Okay. My only question about that would be: would there be a time frame issue that we should have a draft of the easement, or get a lawyer on the hook now, so there isn't a delay at some point because of that?
Mm-hmm.
Is that something we should be doing? My
guess is that's probably a good thing to do, to get at least some kind of a draft going back and forth between the two of us.
Yeah, it seems to. I've been involved with easement questions that can definitely take a long time.
Yeah. If you have any samples of stuff that you've worked with and energy related, I'd be happy to receive a, so I can plagiarize it. But otherwise, I've got some people that can draft something up for me.
Okay, I'll see. Let's see if we can dig something up. But probably,
Okay.
I'm not sure I do, but maybe Mike, between me and Mike, we can find something.
Okay.
Yeah,
Mike.
You know who probably would be a great resource on that is John. Like he's doing all those solar projects, so there might be, yeah, there might. My guess is there are similar issues that he's had to deal with.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll reach out to Langus on that one.
Okay, great. Okay, we talked already a little bit about the alternative funding search. I think that's covered. Does anybody have anything additional to add at this point to the whole process?
So I would say it's unlikely we'll have any new information for a little while because at a certain point we're going to have taken it as far as we can, and then we're going to be on hold till we can get back in the building, and we're close to that point now. So I would suggest we may not need another meeting until late May or June.
Yeah, I tend to agree on that one. And that probably would fly better with a lot of folks that are out there that hate the project too. I hate to say that, but I'm just, I think sometimes those things kind of help a little bit. But yeah, until Mike, we can get you back in the building, I would agree. There may be some stuff that just I can work with individual members like Langus on the easement and stuff and just keep that sort of stuff going. And, that could just be generally an email update to everybody on the committee. But I would say let's wait until we should, maybe if we think about a project team meeting on either, the 18th or the 25th of May. Oh, actually, the 25th is Memorial Day. So maybe the 18th or the 26th, just if people can just either mark their calendars tentatively or something like that, 9:30 on those 2 days until we can figure it out.
Yeah, so, yeah, sure.
Before we wrap up, I do have this question. Is it feasible to buy the time, like as we approach August and are having informational sessions and providing updated information, how certain can we be of if there are in fact reduced project costs and reduced interest costs for borrowing? How will we have that in hand, say by August 1st?
I think that's a reasonable goal on a construction standpoint.
And that, yes. Oh, okay. So you can? Okay.
Yes.
And
Okay.
how do we, like, you ended up last November sending an email to somebody at the Vermont Municipal Bond Bank, right? To ask about a sample. Is that something that you can do again in July and get an answer?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I know a person there directly, Ashley Luch, that used to work for the state. So they just run that number all the time however we need it. Mascoma has provided at Cheryl's request on a couple different things. That's easy to follow up on to get updates there. And then municipal leasing out of Grand Isle, Vermont, that Mike's had a relationship with, had sent a proposal, and they always can amend their stuff too. And then whatever Langus may come up with for private financing, if he can find something, we'll just play into that as well.
Okay, so for action items for next time, I have starting a draft of the easement language. Herb and Langus are going to work on that. Reduced cost estimates by end of July. Mike's going to work on that. Bond estimate, a new bond estimate in July. Herb's going to work on that. Private financing is still undergoing. Langus is still working on that. Anything else for action items at the moment? Continuing the drawings, I guess.
I would just, when we talk about the financing, Aaron, I think there are a lot of people out there that assume that we're doing bonding. I don't know how I think it's just assumed, and now everybody talks that way, but I very specifically had the language drafted by an attorney, the article, so that it doesn't preclude other forms of financing.
So we'll call it a loan estimate, yeah.
So I think it's a borrowing or whatever. Yeah, there's different sources of potential financing that are not just bonding.
Sure, good point.
Yep.
Okay, any other action items for the next month or so?
The only thing I would say is if, Larry, you back on there? Are you live?
I'm here.
Oh, good. So there was the email that went out. I don't know if Mike, if you copied Larry or not.
I did not. I did not.
Okay. Do you have his email?
I should, yeah.
Okay, but it's the first initial last name, so L Wiggins at norwich.vt.us.
Yeah.
If you could forward the stuff to him, because Larry's a registered engineer in both civil and structural engineering. So I just want to make sure that, and the key in all of this is, of course, all the plans and stuff are very preliminary, wholly draft. You know, not all the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, but I just want to make sure Larry starts to get familiar with the.
He should have it now.
Starting to put together. Okay, great. So that would be the only thing, Larry, is just have you take a look at it when you get a second.
Okay, so I'll add Larry to review the drawings as an action item for the next time.
Okay.
And next meeting possibly on 5/18 or 5/26 at 9:30.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that'll just be. I think that'll be a function of the governor and whether he's lifting stuff or not. And then maybe Mike, you and I can get together sometime before that, and then you and I can decide what might be the better date to meet, or even push it off into June.
Yep, that sounds good.
Okay.
All right.
Anything else, anybody?
Oh, I'm all
right.
set.
I think we're done.
Thanks,
all right, stay healthy. See you, bye.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
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 Hey, how's it going? How'd that call go? What's that? Oh, calm. Just, so, can you chat or do I need you right now? Okay. So how's it sounding? Okay. Are they pretty gung ho on the schedule or they seem pretty reasonable? Okay. All right. I'll let you finish up. We'll chat after. Bye. See you.
Got a question. The cell phone rings again, right? You said that African Americans and Latinos should avoid drugs and tobacco. It's very well and do everything on it. There's some people already there's some people that are already offended by that language. Here's my people. I didn't have a response to people that's the thing that I've been meeting with the NAACP, with the National Medical Association, and I actually talked with Derek Johnson multiple times this week, the head of the NAACP, and we need targeted outreach to the African American community, and I use the language that is used in my family. I have a Puerto Rican brother-in-law. I call my granddaddy. I have relatives call later on their grandparents big mama. So that was not meant to be offensive. That's the language that we use and that I use. And we need to continue to target our outreach to those communities. It is critically important that they understand it's not just about them. And I was very clear about that. It's not just about what you do, but you also are not helpless. We need to do our part at the federal level. We need people to do their parts at the state level, and we need everyone, black, brown, white, whatever color you are, to follow the president's guidelines, the virus guidelines, and do their part. Because when I talked to the NAACP 3 weeks ago, it's important to note that one of the things they asked me was, can you help dispel the myths in this community that people actually can't get coronavirus if they're black? That was a myth that was out there that's actually very important for us to squash here. That all Americans are pointing to that alcohol and drug use? Absolutely. It's especially who are risking with comorbidity, but yes, all Americans. So when I clarify that, all Americans use these substances at all times. I put out a smoking cessation report in January. I put out an advisory against youth and pregnant women using marijuana last year, and that was not directed toward any one race. That's everybody needs to do everything they can to be as healthy as possible at this critical time. Why are you acting a little more positive? It's always trying to. My question to you is, and you know what? That's why nobody trusts the media anymore. My question is, how is that going to impact? That's why you used to work for the Times and then you work for somebody else. Look, let me tell you something. Be nice. Don't be threatening. Don't be threatening. Be nice. My question is, how is that going to impact how you fill these orders for ventilators or for masks? Your views that they're not going to, it's not going to impact you at all. Tremendous numbers of ventilators. We're doing a great job on it. Mike Pence, our vice president. Of ventilators. We're doing a great job on it. Mike Pence, our vice president, has headed up the task force, which has been incredible, the job they've done. We have everybody in the White House working on it. We have everybody in the country is working on this in one way or the other. The fact is, we've done a great job of delivering. You've seen the biggest people in the business. I mean, there's nobody even close to this group of people. We had a meeting at 3 o'clock. It lasted for a long time. It was a great meeting with the generals and with everybody else, and they have done a fantastic job. I'm just saying this. If they're holding, let me give you one example. We sent thousands of generators to New York. They were put into a warehouse, a New York warehouse that happened to be located, interestingly, in Edison, New Jersey. They were given to New York, and we then